Ukrainian operators channeled the enemy units directly into pre-sighted artillery kill boxes. Ukraine isn't just collecting tactical drone wins, they're dismantling the shield around the Kerch Bridge piece by piece. We're now seeing attacks 1,400 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. It's billions of dollars that we're seeing going up in smoke here. As Ukraine destroys Russian defences surrounding Crimea, and its deep strike campaign has reached Moscow's retail sector, there are major updates from the front line. I'm Philip Ingram, and this is Battle Plans Exposed. Now, welcome to our milestone 50th episode. It comes in a week where paranoid Vladimir Putin was forced to substitute a real submarine for a poster of one at his once proud naval parade. The despot also lost his cool in a public speech as it emerged that Russia suffered over 140,000 casualties between January and May this year. Ukraine continues to ramp up its deep strikes campaign into Russia, bringing Putin's economy to its knees. Today's maps focus on Ukraine's full-scale defence of key settlements in the Donetsk region and a new strategy being implemented in the Crimea Peninsula, and Ukraine's plan to blitz Russia. But first, let's look at what's been happening on the front lines. This dramatic footage, captured directly from aboard a speeding Russian military train, shows the vehicle hurtling down the tracks engulfed in towering flames after its fuel tanker convoy was struck deep in occupied Ukraine. With fire and thick smoke trailing along the length of the train, the surreal scene highlights the extreme vulnerability of Moscow's rail-based logistics network. Targeting rail lines and fuel transports remains a central tactic in Ukraine's campaign to starve frontline forces of essential supplies. And this stunning video captures the chaotic reality of hitting those critical logistical arteries while they're actively in motion. The railway arteries are critical to Russia's overall logistics. This is significant. Now, in an astonishing fusion of World War I style aerial dogfighting and modern drone warfare, remarkable onboard footage captures the backseat gunner inside a Ukrainian Yak-52 propeller aircraft shooting down a Russian Shahed attack drone with a rifle directly from an open cockpit. By flying low and slow to match the flight profile of the incoming kamikaze drones, these Ukrainian aviators have transformed a vintage trainer aircraft into an amazingly effective, low-cost aerial interceptor. It is a jaw-dropping display of battlefield ingenuity, saving expensive, high-tier air defence missiles by clearing the skies of loitering munitions through sheer grit and marksmanship from the open air. And the Red Baron from the First World War would recognise these sorts of tactics. New footage has just emerged showcasing the raw power of the Ripsaw M3, a tracked unmanned combat beast packing a staggering 1,200 horsepower hybrid drivetrain. Engineered for high-speed mobility over brutal terrain, this autonomous platform combines extreme speed with heavy payload capacity designed to carry remote weapon stations and electronic warfare suites directly into high-risk zones. Given Ukraine's explosive surge in domestic defence innovation and rapid-scale robotic production, manufacturing and adapting a platform of this calibre is well within the reach of Ukrainian engineers who are already revolutionising unmanned warfare under the utmost demanding conditions. And this is taking combat to the Russians without putting Ukrainian manpower in danger. This grainy night vision footage captures the tense atmosphere in the Polish defence room as air raid sirens blare across the Lubin region. A Russian Kh-101 cruise missile appears to veer west, penetrating roughly 100 kilometres deep into NATO airspace. A standby Polish F-16 was scrambled to intercept, but it was too late. Daylight footage reveals the aftermath in the Tawana Kolina, where a wide crater sits carved into a quiet farm field surrounded by charred missile debris and military search teams. The crater is enormous. The warhead in the Kh-101 is significant. And the fact that it went 100 kilometres into NATO airspace, this was not a deliberate attack by the Russians, so would not automatically trigger Article 5, but it shows the danger that there is with Russian missiles flying around close to NATO's borders. For once, here's a piece of drone footage that doesn't end in a horrific destruction. High above the devastated streets of Kostyantynivka, one of the most fiercely contested sectors on the Eastern Front, a Ukrainian drone operator spotted a solitary dog navigating the ruins. In a rare break from surveillance and strike missions, the pilot navigated their drone to deliver a precisely targeted payload of food directly to the stranded animal. In a war increasingly defined by relentless high-tech attrition, this quiet act of frontline compassion serves as a powerful reminder of the humanity enduring amid the chaos we are seeing. This isn't the first time that drones have been used to drop aid. They've been used to drop bottles of water to Russian soldiers and then instructions as how they surrender, or bottles of water and first aid kits to Ukrainian soldiers on the front line. But here we see the Ukrainians will look after the animals that are suffering as much as the people. Now turning our focus to the front line in the Donetsk region, where Russia is preparing for an offensive. We talk about Donetsk a lot. 226 combat clashes in a single 24-hour window. Over 6,000 kamikaze drones deployed. Nearly 200 guided aerial bombs raining down on defence positions. Ukraine's fortress belt, the cities of Kostyantynivka, Kramatorsk, Sloviansk and Lyman, is having to stand its ground. Right now, the Eastern Front in Ukraine is experiencing one of its most brutal high-intensity pushes this month. Russian forces have thrown everything into a massive effort to breach the defences in the Donetsk region. Their target? Break through the front line and endanger the critical stronghold of Dobropillya. But instead of a clean breakthrough, Russian assault columns ran directly into a calculated Ukrainian defence line, one that suppressed hundreds of drones, destroyed forward command points, and trapped Russian elements in deadly kill zones. To understand the resilience required on the ground, you first have to look at the sheer numbers. According to the latest update from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, 226 individual combat engagements were fought across the front in just one day. Russia unleashed a wall of firepower, 59 airstrikes, dropping 190 heavy guided bombs, alongside over 2,000 artillery barrages and more than 6,000 kamikaze drones. The source of this pressure comes from the captured territory of Pokrovsk, down in this southeastern part of the map that we have here. This is where Russia is launching its attacks from. Ukrainian defenders repelled 29 separate assault waves targeting key settlements outside Dobropillya. And what Russia is trying to do here, if you can see on the map, is to try and hook round the outside of these fortress belt cities. With a focus on Beliesk, just north of Pokrovsk, simultaneously another 27 enemy assaults were stopped dead in their tracks near Kostyantynivka, Ilyanivka and Stepanivka. Why is Russia pushing so hard here? The answer lies in the strategic value of Dobropillya. Dobropillya serves as a crucial anchor for the entire Ukrainian defence network in the Donetsk region. And the Donetsk region covers part of what Russia has captured in this area here, but the area that Russia hasn't captured that we can see in the lighter colouring here. If Dobropillya were to fall, it would create a domino effect, exposing supply routes and compromising adjacent defence sectors, freeing Russian forces to advance north. Recognising this, the Russian command launched a multi-pronged assault, attempting to bypass fortified positions using small unit tactics, motorcycles, all-terrain vehicles, and mechanised spearheads to rapidly close the distance. Instead of allowing Russian assault groups to establish a foothold, Ukrainian operators channeled the enemy units directly into pre-sighted artillery kill boxes and dense minefields. Mechanised breakthroughs were blunted, with Ukrainian forces destroying armoured combat vehicles, heavy equipment and armoured bridge layers before they could bridge defensive gaps. And when you analyse the detail of what happened in this region, in particular the use of armoured forces, the Russians were quite bold. They brought about a brigade's worth of capability up and an armoured regiment's worth of capability in, and lost to the Ukrainians at least an armoured company, if not more's worth of equipment and more manpower. The Ukrainians blunted their move, their bold move to try and hook round the outside of these fortress belt cities. In several sectors near Pokrovsk, the Ukrainian defence wasn't just static, it was dynamic and deadly. Ukrainian troops successfully encircled and trapped Russian assault detachments that had overextended beyond their supporting lines. Once isolated, these units found themselves cut off from supply and under continuous fire. The tactical attrition inflicted by Ukrainian forces on the Pokrovsk axis in just 24 hours tells the story. 32 Russian soldiers eliminated and dozens wounded in localised counteractions. 27 personal shelters completely destroyed, with an additional 161 heavily damaged. 3 Russian drone control points targeted and knocked out, severely degrading local enemy aerial coordination. 6 enemy artillery systems damaged alongside crucial fuel depots and specialised military equipment. Perhaps most importantly, Ukrainian electronic warfare and anti-drone teams successfully destroyed or suppressed nearly 300 enemy UAVs in the sector alone. By blinding Russian tactical reconnaissance and shutting down their strike drones, Ukrainian forces systematically stripped the attacking forces of their main battlefield advantage. And this battlefield advantage shows a boldness by the Russians we haven't seen for some time. This boldness was putting such a large group into this area. But it was clear that the Ukrainians had prepared their defences. You put artillery kill boxes into areas where you use your minefields to channel the enemy into those. You've got it pre-designated into your guns and you've pre-reconnaissanced it with your attack UAVs. The Ukrainians knew that this was a vulnerable axis because they know how strong their defences are through this fortress belt that we have. Behind the fortress belt, there are further lines of Ukrainian defences the whole way through. If the Russians ever got up to the edge of the Donetsk oblast and managed to capture all of this, there's nothing really to stop them then moving up towards Kyiv. This is currently Putin's primary objective. Now let's take a look at the latest developments from the Crimea Peninsula, where fresh Ukrainian precision strikes continue to cripple Russia's supply lines. As we touched on at the start of this video, Ukrainian forces have delivered another targeted blow to Russian air defence envelope over occupied Crimea, bringing Kyiv one step closer to isolating the peninsula. Ukraine's military intelligence agency, the HUR, reports that its drone operators successfully struck key elements of Russia's S-400 Triumph air defence network during a nighttime operation on the 26th of July. According to the HUR's Unmanned Systems Department, the strike destroyed 2 critical pieces of military hardware, an S-400 launcher and a 96L6 target acquisition radar. To understand why this matters, you have to look at what the 96L6 radar actually does. It's essentially the eyes of the S-400 system. It operates in the S-band. It can detect aerial targets up to 300 kilometres away and track up to 100 objects simultaneously. Well, so they say. And that's supposed to include low-flying aircraft, drones and high-speed ballistic missiles. But clearly, it missed the drones from the HUR. Taking out that radar leaves the rest of the battery effectively blind. And the launcher it supports is no small asset. The S-400 Triumph is Moscow's premier long-range air defence system, capable of engaging aircraft up to 400 kilometres out and intercepting ballistic threats at ranges of up to 60 kilometres. This strike isn't an isolated event. It's part of a broader methodical campaign. In recent days, Ukrainian forces have also hit a Russian drone control relay station, an energy facility belonging to the Chronomorno-Afogaz in occupied Crimea, and conducting a long-range strike against the Tyumen oil refinery, a critical fuel hub deep inside Russia, powering Moscow's war effort. Which brings us to the strategic question. What does stripping away Crimea's air defences mean for the Kerch Bridge? The Kerch Bridge, of course, in this region here. First, to clarify the military reality, an attempt to physically take or occupy the bridge with ground troops is completely out of the question. Geographically, the front line remains too far to the north. Ukraine has got no ability to get troops easily into this area. They don't have an amphibious capability. Western defence intelligence and military analysts point out that Ukraine is methodically creating a corridor of vulnerability by systematically knocking out S-400 radars, Pantsir systems, which are other Russian air defense systems, and local ferry supply lines around the Kerch Strait. Kyiv is blinding Russian early warning coverage, and without the S-400 umbrella operational, defending the Kerch Bridge against a massive synchronized assault using Storm Shadow or Scalp missiles, possibly ATACMS or other long-range naval drones and missiles becomes exceptionally harder for Moscow. Ukraine isn't just collecting tactical drone wins, they're dismantling the shield around the Kerch Bridge piece by piece before launching what could be the definitive attempt to cut Crimea's main supply artery for good. And the main supply artery, it is the only one. As we've said in recent episodes, the supply arteries to the north have been cut, and the Russians are having difficulty keeping those open. The ferries that go under the Kerch Bridge have been destroyed, so Russia can't do that. Ships coming out of the Sea of Azov and Black Sea into Crimean ports to try and resupply. There have been well over 150 of those disabled. The final straw will be the Kerch Bridge, and that has got a psychological impact as well as a military impact to Vladimir Putin. Isolating Crimea will stop it from being used effectively as a permanent aircraft carrier and resupply dump for Russia's actions into eastern Ukraine. But it will also have a severe psychological blow on Vladimir Putin himself, who, as I've said before, held his honeymoon there and has a dacha there along with many of his oligarchs. And the average wealthy Russian always enjoyed a holiday to Crimea. No more. Do the Ukrainians need to capture it? No. Much better they keep it isolated, and therefore it's another headache for Russia to try and find some way of sustaining using their military capability, not to launch attacks from there, but to sustain the small number of troops and the civilian population that remain there. And now shifting focus to Russia's home soil, where Ukraine is stepping up its deep strike campaign. Just 150 miles southeast of Moscow, in this region here, a massive column of black smoke rose over the Russian city of Ryazan. A coordinated long-range Ukrainian drone strike successfully detonated the fifth largest logistic hub belonging to Wildberries, often called Russia's Amazon. The hit was so severe it caved in the facility's roof, ignited a neighbouring Rosenfeld oil refinery and triggered emergency evacuations across the sector. On paper, targeting an e-commerce giant might seem like an odd choice for long-range strike drones, but in reality, this is part of a calculated campaign to paralyse the grey market supply lines feeding Putin's war machine. The strike on Ryazan represents a major tactical success for Ukraine's long-range unmanned aerial systems. Overnight, deep penetration strike drones bypassed local air defences to target the massive Wildberries logistic hub. The force of the impact and subsequent fires caused a structural collapse of the multi-storey facility, injuring 6 workers and forcing local authorities to declare an immediate evacuation zone. Adding to the damage, the blast ignited a secondary fire at the adjacent Rosneft oil refinery, striking 2 key strategic vulnerabilities at once: fuel processing and supply distribution. Faced with Western sanctions, supply shortages and bureaucratic delays in official defence procurement, Russian volunteer groups, military units and private donors rely heavily on platforms like Wildberries to source equipment. Everything from commercially available FPV drone parts, microelectronics and thermal optics to tactical boots, ballistic plates and communication radios are purchased in bulk through these e-commerce hubs before being shipped directly to the troops on the front line. Wildberries isn't just delivering household goods, it acts as a critical, decentralised military supply system. By dismantling these regional distribution centres, Ukraine cuts off the flow of vital dual-use gear long before it reaches the trench. Ryazan isn't an isolated incident. It's part of an escalating high-tempo campaign against Russian logistical infrastructure. Ukrainian drone strikes targeted Wildberries logistics centre in Prem, marking the furthest hit on the e-commerce giant's infrastructure to date. Sitting approximately 1,400 kilometres from the Ukrainian border, this incident marks the latest in a number of attacks. We've seen attacks in Moscow. Wildberries in Moscow can't be protected. We've seen the attack that I've just described east of Moscow. We've seen attacks on Wildberries up in St. Petersburg. We're now seeing attacks 1,400 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. Wildberries is not just this logistic hub that is supplying military materiel out to the Russian military and acting as the same supplier that we get goods from Amazon to the Russian public. It is also hugely in debt to the Russian banks because a lot of what it stores is been paid for by borrowed money. It's billions of dollars that we're seeing going up in smoke here, and the Russian banks can't afford to lose that sort of money. It's not only just billions of dollars for the Russian banks, but a lot of the Russian people run their businesses where the stock is held in Wildberries warehouses and distributed directly from there. That stock is not insured, and therefore there's a lot of little businesses going out of business across Russia. This is bringing the war home, and this is disrupting a vital supply line for Russian troops on the front line and Russian military capability. This is significant, and we need to watch it very closely indeed. But forcing Russia to stretch its air defence assets thin, choosing between protecting frontline troop concentrations, oil refineries, or massive civilian military logistic hubs deep inside its own borders, Ukraine is creating structural friction throughout the Russian war effort. So that's all for today's Battle Plans Exposed, our 50th episode in the series. And we're going to tweak the format slightly. But to do that, we want your ideas. So please tell us what it is that you think we should be talking about. Any structural changes, any other ideas about what's going on, let us know. And let's see if your ideas change into what we produce here. But thank you for watching. If you like what you've seen, please share it amongst your friends. Subscribe to the channel and tell your friends to subscribe to the channel. And share us amongst your social media outlets as well. Let's get this as wide as possible. I'm Philip Ingram. Thank you and goodbye.